Go.
Yep.
Today's presentation, which is October the 14th, is our fifth one. And today's presenters are going to be Jeff Petz from Lakeside High School, Scott Norty, if we can get him hooked up, Tom Doyle, and Dave Ticker, if he is here for today's presentation. Okay, slide 2, 3. The mentoring committee. The schedule is today is October the 15th, which is our fifth webinar session. This will be on the WSSAAA website when you're all finished today, and we send it on to that site. Anybody can look onto it. As of the last session, we had 138, I think, hits onto that website, to which people are looking at the different presentations. Okay, the next one. Next slide. Okay, the document. Yeah. Remember, if you want to get clock hours, make sure you send those to Dave Ticker with his email addresses there. If you have questions, there's a place down below to do questions. You can type in a question. I'm going to try to leave everybody non-muted so everybody can put into it, as long as there's not too much background noise to go with it is. Okay, next place. We're going from Tuesdays. The LTI classes that were being offered up are going to be one in December, but there'll also be one coming up in the April conference with registration. Go ahead. Today's topic, we're going to talk about parents. Then we'll get down to some state tournament type things and rewards for personal satisfaction. So let's go ahead and go to the first topic.
Okay.
Is this you? Who's this?
This is Jeff Petz.
Okay, Jeff, go ahead.
So I think let me change the screen.
We played him a couple of years ago. It was good.
Go ahead.
Right.
There, boy, Jeff.
Yep. Hold on.
Good. Excellent.
So let's talk a little bit about parents. And some of the biggest things is you can't ever keep them up. A lot of the parents. You have a good amount of parents coming in as first-time freshman parents, anything like that. And the biggest thing is just make sure you can get everything out there. Be very transparent, be very clear in your communication, and make yourself available. A couple things with just some forms. It's always good to have booster forms, volunteer forms. I don't know how many of you athletically, in your athletic forms are doing it on the web anymore, or if you're doing it hard copy with paper. But having things available all the time obviously is very proactive in your case. One thing that a lot of schools do, and it's highly advised to do so, is have a parent night meeting. I've worked in a larger school and a smaller school, and what I found is sometimes in the smaller schools you get the same parents because you have a lot of multi-sport athletes. A lot of times doing a mandatory fall sports meeting and covering an array of things that you're going to do over the year is important. At your parent night meeting, there's a lot of schools that when I was at the larger school, we did a every season meeting. So we had a fall sports, winter sports, and a spring sports meeting. Some people make it required. I've had other ADs who said theirs is required. If parents did not attend, then they had to sign a document after reading some philosophical things from the athletic department. One of the things that you can do if you have a parent night meeting, have a quick slideshow. And I have one up if you guys can see it. You guys see where it says a growing issue? So one of the things that when you do your slideshows, it's very easy to become very dry in your presentation. It's okay to add a little bit of humor. I'll just show you a couple of quick things on ours. We talked about a growing issue that's going on in athletics right now. That has to do with just sportsmanship. We talked about how, parents and what the sport is coming to at this point. It's okay to add a little bit of humor in what you do. I think when you have this type of meeting, you need to make sure that you emphasize what your athletic program's philosophy is. It is really about your goals and how you see your program working. You might emphasize that you don't talk about other kids to parents, you talk about their child. And the big thing that you probably want to have on here is really more or less you're talking about kind of how your process goes. So here is what I put down as some of the philosophical things for us. Okay, and this is the type of thing that when you talk about your philosophy, this is what we put. So it ends up being a good communication tool for you and your parents. It's also very important that you talk about the process that you have for communication. I'll show what we do. This is pretty standard for a lot of people. And if you go through the process with the parents, it helps in the long run on being proactive with those parents that you may have to deal with issues. The other thing you can do with your parent night is have them meet the coaches and talk about your schedules. Tom Doyle was my mentor, and he told me he had a great phrase that said, sub-varsity schedules are not finalized until they're played, because there's so many different changes that can happen. And I think just communicating that with a lot of your JV and C and Frosh team parents, letting them know that a lot of external factors that come into play and that you do your best to get out there and communicate. So let me go back to, I think it was Bruce's screen. Bruce, can you bring up that PowerPoint again?
This is Tom. I'm going to jump.
Yep,
I'm going to jump
perfect.
in, and Tom's going to jump in and do that. So just hang on 1 second.
Okay.
I got to get the right one. So right here.
You were on slide 9. So as Tom's bringing that up, we'll just talk a little bit about the relationships that you have with parents. I think the biggest thing, again, and I use the word a lot, is being proactive. Be present, be available. Talk to the parents when you can. You go to different matches, meets, games, anything. Talk to your parents. Get to know them. You'll have some parents that are very positive with you. You'll have some parents that are very negative. No matter what you do, it's not what they're expecting. The best thing to do with those types of parents that I've seen is you just encourage them to be supportive of your program, the athletic teams, the coaches, the players, and compliment them when they do something well. The biggest thing that I think I'd pass on to everybody with the parents is be involved, be present, be visible, and let the parents know that everybody that's there is working in the best interest of the kids at hand. So that's really the part that I talked about with parents today. Again, having your philosophy ready and sticking to it and believing in your philosophy will help you with a lot of the things that you have to deal with when it comes down to parents. Anybody have any comments to add on that?
Even if we keep one.
Great. Anybody have questions? I just turned everybody back on here. So anybody has a question or anything to add?
No question.
This is Bruce Brown. I think just to include in that, obviously we want to communicate things that are going on within our program. The coach wants to be proactive with that, but I think as athletic administrators, one of the things that we keep in the back of our minds constantly is we're also educating not only the young people, but we're oftentimes coaching the parents a little bit as to here's what our expectations are, here is the why we have interscholastic athletics, and that's a piece. It sounds like it's a luxury piece to add on, but I think it's very critical that we intentionally have those conversations because many of our people have lost that vision, and as the athletic director, you're at a prime position to take the lead in what are we saying and what types of information are we putting in front. And it may be something just as simple as forwarding some blogs or forwarding some articles. That's a very critical piece, an opportunity that we don't want to miss.
And I think Bruce brings up a good point. I think the more that you communicate as well with the way that social media is going, if you understand the stuff of using Twitter or things like that, where you can tweet out those types of things to the parents, because a lot of the parents and kids are onto that stuff, and you get them to follow, and that you can put those blogs, you can put those links, you can update parents all the time what's going on. And again, you can never communicate enough.
We put it every year that school is open except for one this year.
Okay. Any other questions on the parent part? Okay, let's move to the next part, which is talking some about state tournaments. And Scott Nordy, I think we have you on there. You going to take us through that? Okay, Scott, we don't have you. Can you make sure that, okay, so we don't hear him. So basically the bottom line, and Scott, you jump in if you get on here. The bottom line to this is that the allocations are determined based on the number of schools in a classification that have that sport. So the WIAA at the beginning of each 2-year cycle, and this year is the beginning of a 2-year cycle, does a survey using the district directors to find out how many schools in each classification have a particular sport. So take a sport like cross country. How many actually are participating in cross country and have enough kids, which is 5 kids on a team, to be counted as a team. They then go and look at the number of them in from each district and determine the numbers. So for instance, just to take 4A boys cross country, there are 8 in District 1, 9 in District 2, 24 in District 3, 7 in District 4, 4 in District 5, 7 in District 6, 6 in District 8. So there's a total of 65 teams. And then they figure out what percentage each district is of that 65, multiply it by the number that get to go to the state tournament, which is basically based on 16-team brackets, and figure out the number of allocations. They do it over a 2-year cycle so that you know in your particular district you might have 4 allocations this year and 3 allocations next year, so that you can do a little bit of planning and make sure that you understand how all of that works. Sorry about the phone ringing here. You also then, once they determine the number of schools in each classification that have that particular sport, then they could go out and make brackets. So brackets such as football and soccer are brackets that are published in the fall. As soon as they make a determination, the WI board goes through and looks at those and passes them. The volleyball bracket is completed, but we don't publish the volleyball bracket until after the last district tournament, because what they're obviously trying to do there is make sure that schools aren't making choices. We're not trying to help people be ethical. We're not putting people in a position where somebody might say, we're better off losing the championship of the district, so we end up number 2 because that's a better seed than number 1. So they don't publish the volleyball bracket. The football and the soccer they do, because those things are not influenced that way. There is a whole set of criteria for establishing the brackets. It's all listed in the WIA handbook so that one can go in there and see specifically how it's drawn. You can't play against somebody from your own district in the first round, or we're going to go across the mountains, or we're not going to go across the mountains. There's a whole list of those criteria that are established and listed in the WIA handbook. In terms of traveling to state events, as we're getting closer here now, I think the first thing that I would want to do is if I go to, I thought I had it up here, if I go to WIA.com, and when you get to WIA.com, if you will go into the AD Center and into My WIAA, you each have a different login for that, and you should know that. If you don't, you can let us know, or you can let the WIA know, and we'll get you in. But once you get into the My WIAA, on there is where you go in and do all the tournament registration, for instance. So down here you'll see tournament registration and that whole process. So you would go in here as you're getting closer to the tournament, okay, we're going to send boys to the cross-country state championship. And you can go in there and you can actually go in and you can fill out all of the lists of who's going to come, who the personnel are, superintendent, you see all that information down there. Gives you the opportunity to put in photos for the kids who are top qualifiers for these or ran in it last year. It gives you the opportunity to upload photos and all that business. All of this should be done right now, even though we're a few weeks away from state tournaments. If you think you have any possibility of getting into the state tournament, you should be going in here and providing that information on the MyWIAA. And this is true for any of the sports that we're doing, say girls soccer, same thing. You go in here and, you've got the same kind of screen where it's going to ask you for rosters. It's going to ask you for school board members, all that business. Allows you to put the roster in here. You can put up teams and scores. You can also put up team photos. So you should be doing that right now if you have any possibility of getting into a district or state tournament. A lot of the districts are also using this to create their rosters for games. So if you think there's a possibility of being in a district or a state tournament, please go into this MyWIAA right now and get working on making sure that that's ready to go on it. The other thing you need to start talking about is, if you're going to be going to a state event, is who gets to go. If you have to spend overnight, for instance, traveling from the east side of the mountains and coming over to the Seattle or Tacoma area, who's coming? Are you bringing the band, the cheerleaders? Are you bringing just the team, or are you bringing, kids that were maybe on your JV teams? You've got to start making those kinds of decisions using the information in your school. What's been the past history? You got to start talking to people in your school, your principal, your superintendent. Find out, what kinds of precedent you have for who gets to come and how's it paid for and all that business. You need to start talking about, if you got to stay overnight, for instance, where are you going to do that? You got to make those reservations. You've got to figure out how you're going to supervise all of that. We have a case here in Seattle where one of the Seattle schools went on a overnight trip. It wasn't an athletic event, but it was another overnight trip, and there was an incident on that trip which caused them a lot of problems. They went and they just paid a big fee to take care of that, a big liability case to take care of it. So we got to make sure we've got supervision taken care of. Are you taking school buses? Are you taking the yellow school buses, or are you renting a bus from someplace else? All of those kinds of things are issues that you need to begin talking about and preparing for now, even though we're a number of weeks away from when you might be needing to do that. So those are the kind of quick topics on the travel to state tournaments and things like that. Does anybody have any questions about anything that has to do with the state tournaments? Anybody want to add anything to that? Okay. Let's move on then to the next slide, which Bruce Brown, who is the Executive Director of the Ohio Association, is going to take us through that. And I'm going to turn the screen back over to you now, Bruce.
All right, Tom, thank you. First, we want to thank everybody for allowing us this opportunity. We all got into this business for some type of a reason. And I think the one thing that we realize pretty quickly once we get into it, that this is a very unique position. It sometimes is a little bit thankless, probably more so than what we'd like, but it definitely is a servant type of work. And I think it's very important. I mention that because whether you're a newbie or whether you're still evolving in the process, I think it's important that we understand that positioning of the athletic administrator's position, because as a result of that culture that we're in, we have to be very cognizant of the fact that there are challenges that are unique to this that do have the potential to drive people out of the profession unless you have a mindset and you have a grasp of what types of challenges and what types of things that you're going to be working with over time. So what we're going to do is just go through some slides and talk a little bit about some of the things that you just need to make sure that you're prepared for. And up there on the screen now are some of the areas that we're going to break down here. Like most of us, I would imagine we've all come from some type of an athletic background or certainly an administrative background. And just like in coaching, one of the first things that you address is, okay, why are you pursuing that? Why pursue interscholastic athletics? What is it that, what is the why? And in coaching, I could go through a whole litany of things that, this is why I got into coaching. So for me to make that transition, I really believe that I was going into the dark side, as they say. So I sat down professionally with some of my peers, some of my friends, and it was a very good conversation because I needed perspective as to what was I getting into. And one of the comments that was made to me, and it's always stuck, that in athletic administration, we need to realize what we're going to achieve is, like in coaching, we're going to have victories, but they're going to be quiet victories. They're not going to be the front page of the Friday night or the Saturday morning paper. And for some coaches, we need to grasp that. So if you're coming from that background where you're used to the highs and the lows, it's a little more moderate, and a lot of what we do is behind the scenes. But we need to also focus on the fact that that's the nature of it, and that's what we want to relish along the way. With that comes in the question of ego. And let's be clear, performers, high-performance individuals have egos, and that's okay, as long as the ego doesn't get in the way of what we're doing. Sometimes we need to check that ego at the door, and I think we've all seen high performers, some of the very best, who don't necessarily need to be fueled with their egos to be a high performer. And that's the
Unmuted.
What we do as athletic administrators. We have to remain focused on our mission and the fact that we are going to truly impact a lot of individuals and certainly coaches along the way. You do need the ego, but we just need to make sure that even like in coaching, we don't need to have that in check, but understand that we are still going to have an impact upon our coaches, our community, our school, actually a much broader scope of impact than maybe we did as coaches. The impact is tremendous along the way. So as we move into this work, one of the keys, just like we do when we coach, is we need to have an honest assessment of what kind of skill sets do we have. And again, we entered into this work with a wide variety of backgrounds, some history, but we all have certain strengths. And we need to assess those things honestly. Maybe you're a communicator, and that's what you relish in. That's what you really enjoy. You certainly want to play to those strengths. Maybe it's organizational. Maybe it's fiscal in nature. You have some great marketing or budget ideas, whatever those skills may be. And likely you have multiple skills, but we want to make sure that we're playing to our skills, much like what we do when we coach. We talk about what is John or Cindy's best skills. Let's make sure we put them in a position to be successful. So just like athletes, we want to make sure that we're playing to those strengths. The next point that we talk about, and I think this is really critical, as an athletic administrator, as much as we get thrown at us, whether it be expectations from administration or community or from our own staff, one of the key pieces of what we do that makes our position unique is we still are coaching coaches. And honestly, when I first heard that term, moving from coaching into athletic administration, I struggled with that. And the reason I struggled is because by no means did I ever feel that I was an expert in somebody else's discipline. You know, I could not go to my football coach who had been on the job for 20-plus years and been to some state championship games, and far be it from me to come in and tell him how to be a better football coach. But what I quickly understood was I need to act as a facilitator and work with coaches so they are on a continuum of improvement and getting better and addressing the things that our kids need. Therefore, I shifted my vision of what coaching coaches really meant. By no means do we have all those answers, but we certainly want to facilitate. So as an athletic administrator, this might be a little bit of a personal bias, but I believe strongly that you are in the prime position to influence, to coach coaches, to promote that continuous development, professional development of what they need to do to improve as individual coaches, especially as it impacts the young people in your school. The other piece to this in terms of assessing your status, and this might be one of the tougher things in some cases, and that is to ensure that the people that you work with, whether it be your coaches, but certainly your administrative team, that there's a level of communication, and the communication is clear and frank. We've all seen situations either from afar or, hopefully we haven't been in many of these, but we've all seen situations where the upper level administrators have one vision of what interscholastic athletics are supposed to be, and the athletic director and or the coaches have a variance of that. That obviously creates some conflict, but part of the role and part of the moving forward as an athletic administrator is to have those clear conversations. We talk a lot in the school that I was most recently at. We talked a lot about mission and purpose of our school. Well, we were fortunate to have the conversations to make sure that we aligned those missions with what our athletic our athletic program mission is. And I think the thing that we all can realize is, unlike the quote-unquote old days, where a lot of our administrators came from coaching ranks or had been affiliated with athletics, we're not seeing that nearly as much. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the way that it is. And as a result of that, we also have to coach administrators too. And it doesn't mean, again, we have those answers, but making the assumption that everybody gets it, we can throw that out. And I think all of us that have been doing this for any length of time, whether it be 2 months or 20 years, realize not everybody views interscholastic athletics the same way. And realistically, we're never going to get everybody back to whatever the good old days might have been. But we do have to intentionally have those conversations. That's a key piece that involves not only the administrative team, but also our parents, our community, and our coaches. So we're always talking about alignment to ensure that why interscholastic athletics is in our district. Let's make sure we're clear on what that why is. And that impacts so much more of what we do on a daily basis. That influences everything from how coaches are going to be assessed, how we're going to build our programs, how we're going to sell initiatives to our community, whether it be an approach of how we want our coaches to act and behave, to actually building facilities. What is our mission? Why do we have it here? And that sounds a little ivory towerish, but it's one of those conversations that if we're going to sustain ourselves and have a quality situation, we have to have those talks. We have to have that continual conversation with our administrators along the way to make sure that we're all aligned. It's the old thing about making sure everybody's got the oars in the water and we're all rowing in the same direction too. So going back to the idea of coaching coaches, and I think those of us that have been in it for a while grasp the concept, but it goes way beyond the X and O's. It has to do with presenting and facilitating opportunities for our coaches to grow. This is no different than the building principle or the superintendent or the Board of Education's expectations of the teaching staff. There's an expectation of continuous improvement. In fact, I think every one of our states have a continuum of some sort. This is what you're required to continue to study and improve upon. Why not have those same type of expectations? Whether it's state mandated or whether it's just from a professional standpoint, we have those conversations. And that's difficult. We get the pushback on some of that, but the communication with coaches and with staff as to the why we're doing this is critical. So when we talk about creating opportunities for coaches to learn more, we want to engage our coaches beyond just the technical clinics. Those things are important. We certainly want to encourage them to do that, but what we want them to do is to get down to the gut level. We want to make sure that they understand what their true purpose and mission is in interscholastic athletics. We really look to a lot of the NFHS coach education courses. I know a lot of states have adopted the fundamentals of coaching, and this isn't an advertisement just for coaches education, because there's a lot of different resources and mediums that you can utilize. But the NFHS coach education courses are sound. They have been proven to be very accessible, but they're a great starting point, especially if you're getting young people coming into your program as coaches that either haven't come from a strong coaching background or maybe it's their first opportunity. Aligning again with what is it that's our mission, what are we supposed to be doing, those opportunities and that type of coursework is there. So we really try to get our coaches engaged in that type of training. Another piece that's important is the paradigm that you create within your program. When I coached, I always valued a relationship with my athletic administration and my school administration that wasn't going to try to or create a sense of gotcha. And I think, again, many of us have been in coaching long enough that, unfortunately, some of our peers have found themselves in that. It's like, okay, I'm going to document everything that you're not doing well. Creating a culture that the coaches know that you're going to support and you're also going to provide growth opportunities is important. And that doesn't come by giving them a sheet of paper to say, here's my philosophy. It has to do, again, with honest, clear communication, repeated information that we sit down and have with our coaches, whether it be in small group, large group, but we want to create an attitude and a culture of we're going to support you and we're going to grow and we're going to provide you means to get better as a coach. One of the particular tools that we use that was very helpful, and again, it's not one of these things that's standardized, but we're talking about nuggets here of what we can do to strengthen those conversations, is developing vision for your coaches. And this serves so many purposes. Now, we called ours a 3-year plan. It was just something that we developed, but the concept is very simple. And that is that we asked all of our coaches. Now, when we say coaches, obviously we're talking more about the head coaches, but there's an expectation that they get their staff involved with this, whether it be the middle school or the high school. But we really try to point our coaches in a direction where they are developing both vertical and horizontal vision of their program. That's why we hired them, is to develop their program. So my role as the athletic administrator, and going back to the coaching coaches, is to advise, gather information, assist the coach, really start to teamwork this process of how do we vision where we're going. Now, how you structure that is something that each individual athletic administrator certainly could develop, but some of the key pieces that we found were benefits were, one, it becomes a great assessment piece. So now when we sit down with a coach, whether it be pre or in season or post season, we can always refer to the plan. You know, This is where you said you wanted to be. This is what you anticipated. Now let's keep reflecting on that as we move forward. And this is an ongoing process. So each year we extend that plan out. So we're asking our coaches not to coach in the moment, not to coach just their team, but rather to develop all the aspects of their athletic program. The other benefit we found, and we're talking about now communication and how do we develop the vision of our program, is we found this as a great advertisement, if you will, to our board, to our other administrators, to our community, because we all have heard the comment, those coaches don't have a clue. They don't know what they want out of the program. Well, let's time out here. We've developed, and again, the operative term is we've developed a 3-year plan. I'm working with the coaches. I've seen where they anticipate pieces being in their program. So we're constantly communicating vision, alignment, and the direction of the program. We understand that winning and losing comes into play, and that can be emotional, and that can be a lot of angst, with that. But by having a 3-year plan, it's not an end-all, be-all, but it does give us a platform to work with our coaches as to having a plan, having a direction, and we've got a roadmap. It really addresses a broad range of pieces as we coach our coaches. This last piece, I believe, is really important, and unfortunately it's the one that probably gets the least amount of attention from those of us that have been in this work, and we just get so immersed and caught up. It's almost like being in a tsunami sometimes. Let's be clear. You need to be intentional about your own well-being. I think every one of the speakers and presenters and all of the people that we've heard from over the last few weeks would agree that if you leave your personal well-being, whether that be an actual fitness program or just going out for a walk or your diet, whatever it might be, if you don't intentionally work on what you're going to do, it will get away from you. And the easiest thing I think we all have realized and been this for a while, if we take the approach, well, I'll fit that in when I can. Well, there is no when you can, especially once the school year starts rolling. But you need to intentionally plan, just like you would a meeting in some cases. I worked with a building principal one time, and he was an excellent administrator, very, very busy, always had something moving and a lot of initiatives. But we knew from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock every day he was not going to be reachable. And the reason was that was his workout time. Now, obviously, if there was a teacher's meeting or something really critical, he could adjust. But if he didn't put that in there, then there was always going to be something that would pull him away. And I think we all can identify with that. I always enjoy, and I shouldn't say enjoy, but I always made it a point, I was an early riser, and that's where my workout time was, and because I couldn't be bothered. But everyone finds that area or that space, if you will, but that's really critical that we
Unmuted.
That has to be intentional, just like it would be a planned meeting. You can't just say, well, I'll get around to it. If you don't do that, then 30 pounds later and colds and congestion and all the other stuff that comes along with it sometimes can do us in. So we need to be very specific about that. Keep your family engaged. That is probably the toughest piece, especially if you've got a younger family, but it is something, again, that we need to have a plan for. Keep them involved, keep them around. That may be difficult if there's a real young family, but in some manner, keep them engaged. And there's a couple thoughts here. One is it keeps you in good contact. I've seen athletic administrators that if the board policies don't supersede it, they use their family with different events, whether it be as a volunteer or whether it be a paid person, everything from ticket takers to help with supervision. Obviously depends upon their age. But just like in coaching, you want your family to feel like they're a part of it. The other piece that's important is that those family members are going to be privy, oftentimes, to conversations, situations that occur, and there's some particular areas that you'll want them to understand as best they can the whys and wherefores. And obviously there's confidentiality concerns, there's just being professional. So having them engaged in what you do and how you go about your work is important, if nothing else, because it creates a little bit more empathy on their end as to why you do what you do. If they're still of school age, they're going to hear it. I mean, it's no different than the head football coach and the son is involved in a key position. They're going to hear it. So we know that there's that aspect. But keeping them engaged also is going to have a huge impact upon your own well-being along the way. Those are areas that I think are really critical that we get thinking about. And again, I go back to the word intentionality. I think that's very important. That you just can't say, well, I'll get to it when I can. We all know that we have a laundry list of things we have to address every day. But focusing back on why am I in it, what are my purposes, what kind of communication am I having with all of my stakeholders, and then taking care of your personal well-being. It won't necessarily make the job easier, but it certainly can impact maintaining your sanity along the way also. Any questions or any comments that anybody would like to make?
Bruce, I think this is Jim Piccolo. I think you've done a great job of that presentation part of it. Having that roadmap and having a target is really important. And if you don't have that target or roadmap, then you're just floundering out there as a department. Even though your department may be successful, it still doesn't have a direction and a vision to where it really needs to be that much better than it is right now.
Yeah. That's a great point, Jim. And I came from coaching. I coached basketball for 20 plus years, and I really, after a while, tried to assimilate many of the same approaches when I was developing a program with my athletic department. In other words, the things that we wanted to do to integrate within the community, to integrate within certainly our student body. We tried to parallel some of the same approaches and concepts, but having a plan goes so far with underscoring the program today, because there's so many people. The adage we use around here is, unfortunately, many of our parents look at athletics and they say, well, a coach is a coach is a coach, right? And they're relating that to AAU, JO, high school, and you want to just stop them in the tracks. You're going to say, whoa, we're not even in the same ballpark. But in the eye of the stakeholder, they don't see the difference. So we have to do a better job differentiating that, and part of that is by having the plans that you're referring to, Jim.
Yeah, and I think that important is, we took a little different approach just to add to it. We took a 7-12 approach because all our athletes are 7 to 12 going through our school system. But I think it really gives your community and school that communicational piece, that you're transparent and you're purposeful in what you're trying to make or discover or develop.
Bruce, thank you. A couple of things that I would add. I thought your 3-year plan is a tremendous idea. I'm going to turn some people off here for a second. I think that I put up on the screen now, I think I might be doing echoing. I put up on the screen now that the NFHS website, because you were talking about that. And so I wanted to make sure that people have a chance to see that here. And on that website, there's a list of courses, and it's nfhslearn.com, and there's a list of courses, everything from coaching sports-specific courses to dealing with parents to homework, concussions, sportsmanship, all sorts of things that are just great courses that you can take online and that your coaches can use for their coaching certification as well. So if you're looking for some places to find some of those courses. Those are some great sites. So thank you for that.
Unmuted.
Thing that I wanted to do before we're done, one of the people that's on here with us is Barbara Tortis. And Barbara was a longtime athletic director at Seattle Schools and was involved in developing this mentoring program and was president of the NIAAA. And I don't know, Barbara, whether you have anything you want to add before we're done here or not.
Nice job to Bruce Brown and go Bucks.
All right. Sorry,
go.
I had to throw that in.
All right, so does anybody else have any other questions before we're finished here? Okay, if you're looking, the next meeting is going to be on November 4th. It's not the second Monday because the second Monday is Veterans Day, or second Tuesday, so it'll be November 4th. We'll cover those sections which you have in your packet. And again, these are the presenters. I apologize to Scott Nordy. We're going to figure out how to get you going today, Scott. Thank you to Jeff Dietz and Bruce Brown for your participation in this. And there's their email addresses if you want any information about parents or about the material that Bruce talked about. You can email them directly as well. So, last chance, any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you for participating today. So, Pick, you're going to stop the recording, if you will. And